Welcome to the Real Life Moms podcast. It is time to take a break from all our to-dos and carve out this time to focus on ourselves. I'm Lisa Foster, your host, and today I'm here with Jen Morris. She is the founder of Renegade Motherhood and the Mother Mind Collective. And today we're going to explore the powerful combination of passion, consistency, and community to pave our way to success. Hi, Jen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Lisa, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you because we've kind of known each other in the community for a while, just here and there floating around. But I recently went to one of your events, which was amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. And I love that you said that motherhood and business is not meant to be done alone. So that really hit home for me. It felt like a warm hug, like, oh my God, thank you. Because as a solopreneur and a mom, like that is just such a welcoming statement. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what inspired you and the background behind this community that you've built.
Yeah, thanks. I know I loved seeing you there and not being on your table for a concussion like the first time I met you. And I will plug you, it definitely helped. So you have magic hands and abilities. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm glad I found you when I really needed you. And I'm glad you found the community when you needed it. So yeah, I mean, I've been in business for many, many years, like almost 2 decades. And solopreneurship, whether you're a mom or not, it can be a very lonely path. And so I very kind of early on in my entrepreneurial endeavors tapped into the power of professional networking organizations. And it's kind of not surprising that the way I sort of found my first, I was living in New York City. I was pursuing an acting career. I'd started this kind of part-time sales affiliate gig, and I was doing a show, and one of the women in the show with me was like, oh, your business is cool, you should come to this networking group, and didn't even know like what it was, this idea of like networking. I was like, I don't even know what this means, but went to this first meeting in New York City, Grand Central Station. It was at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. And even though it was definitely a little intimidating because it was a lot of lawyers and financial people and insurance and a lot of guys in suits, I really quickly saw how powerful this could be from learning a lot. There were quite a few people who were sales people and had sales backgrounds, and it was still pretty new to me. And I, really decided to jump in. I ended up being part of that group, eventually became president of that group, led it for many years. It led to some amazing relationships, people who are still very much part of my network, even though I've now not been in New York for over 9 years. But when I flash forward however many years, had my first daughter 7.5 years ago, I very quickly realized that like a lot of my sort of go-to networking communities that were really, again, important, not only for business, but also just for like community, mental health, friendships, strategic partnerships, weren't really going to work for me anymore. The 7 a.m. time, like with a newborn, was not easy. And then having to be someplace every single week was also not really easy. So I started to look for some other ways to create it in a way that would work for me. Started a different group in Denver that was growing and flourishing quite beautifully. And then COVID hit. And we didn't really have like a digital presence at that point. And people were so tapped out on Zoom that it just wasn't the right fit. And in the midst of all this, I had my second child. And so after coming out of my postpartum haze, which definitely struggled with some mental health things of just being pregnant during a pandemic, being in business, like we were all home all the time, like many people were. I was struggling, and I'm an extrovert. I'm somebody who really likes to be with people in person. Zoom is amazing. It's an amazing tool. It's amazing technology, but it does not, for me at least, replace the power of like sitting around a table with a cup of coffee and talking to people. But what was interesting was that prior to COVID, I was like, I really wanted to be with just all types of business owners, and it wasn't necessarily mom specific. Coming out of the pandemic, I really found myself wanting to have conversations with moms, but specifically business conversations with moms. There was something there that was like just this idea of like, if we can get moms who have businesses together, we can, I think immediately have a little more compassion and understanding for like how we're showing up. So if we're late, it's like, we all get it. We get it. It's like, if we show up and then we get a call, then we have to leave immediately because our kid's throwing up at school. Like we get it. So that's kind of how it started for me, was just this idea. I posted in a local Facebook group and part of our community where we live, and just said, are there any other moms and businesses here? And a few, like two people, like liked it, and maybe one or two people commented, but somebody offered space, and we had our first meetup a couple weeks later, and I think maybe like 12 of us were there, and that was 2.5 years ago now, and it just grew. And then I got to the point where I kind of had a kind of reckoning with myself of like, I was most of my entrepreneurial journey had been in nutrition and wellness. And I really loved that for a period of time, but I felt like I was shifting and evolving as well.
Mhm.
And so the things that used to fill me up were changing. And what was really filling me up was building this community and supporting other moms in business. And so about 9 months ago, I really made the decision to fully step into this new space. And it's just been pretty magic. So, but you're right. I mean, moms, we are not meant to do motherhood alone. We are not meant to do business alone. And it's pretty incredible what happens, the magic that happens when you get a group of moms in business together. The amazing stuff that comes out of those interactions are just continue to just give me life. Even if it's
Yeah.
not necessarily directing me, or impacting me. I think sometimes with networking, it's so transactional. People are about what's in it for me. And it's like,
Mhm.
I get so much joy from just like hearing from people like, oh, yeah, that connection you made, like we had coffee and it was really impactful. Or, oh, I ended up just booking a client through somebody who referred somebody to me. I mean, that's awesome. Like that's how it should be when we're looking out for the greater good instead of just like what's in it for us.
Totally.
It's a beautiful thing.
And yes, you have brought, I think there are special people out there that like bring and attract special people, and your community is exactly that. Like I went to one meeting, right? One meeting, and you had us like say a 30-second thing about our business, right? And honestly, I had 5 reach outs
Oh,
like
that's
when I got
awesome.
home in my email, and you didn't
I
even
love
give
that.
out our emails, which was the funny thing because I was like already, because I had in my head that I was going to reach out to certain people too that I took notes on, and then I realized I didn't have the emails. I was like, oh my god, these people actually went out of their way and also looked me up. And just like you said, what I think about moms, it's like this instant connection, right? So, of
Mhm.
course, business and motherhood, it's like such a great harmony together because we do want to help each other. And those calls I did follow up on, and I did get to talk to people. And it was so funny because it was more like, oh my God, tell me about your business. Oh my God, tell me about your, like, we each wanted to know so much about each other versus just pitching ourselves. And it was just
Yeah.
beautiful. And I have networked with them, so thank you for creating that community and just
Oh,
your
thanks for
energy that
sharing
brings
that.
them all
I love it.
together.
I love it. Sometimes I don't hear enough of that, and so it's always, I love hearing what actually happens like outside the meeting.
Yes, and just a reminder for the listeners, we touch more people than we will ever know, right? When we put stuff out there. So like yeah, like you didn't even know that, but you touched me and 5 other people. So amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about that formula that you have to kind of accelerate us on this path. So, I think the components you said were like passion, consistency, community, and timing. So, could you walk us through maybe some of these different components and how it actually helps us get on this path of success?
Yeah, I think so many times we get excited about something and then we don't follow through. And I think as moms, we can be guilty of this because we take on too much to begin with. But like if you're listening to this and you could be kind of in two categories. One is maybe you don't have a business, but you kind of had an idea for something, or there's something that you really love doing. Like for me, I noticed that some of my passion was waning a little bit for the wellness world that I had been in, which doesn't mean I don't still enjoy it, but I didn't necessarily want to build a business around it anymore. But I was feeling really lit up by the work I was doing inside of this networking community and the conversations I was having. And so it would have been easy for me to just ignore that and be like, well, everyone knows me as Jen, the nutrition person, Jen, the postpartum person. And so you want to listen to those downloads that we're getting, especially if it's something that you really like, you get excited about. But then we have to actually like put the systems in place to do it. A personal trainer would tell you, you don't go to the gym once, you don't work out once with a trainer, right? You don't eat one vegetable and you're good for life, right? It's similar to business. You can't have the idea and then talk about it one time or go to one networking event, right? You have to find the things that, you know, you're going to show up and do every day that puts you and your idea out in the world. That's kind of the caveat, is I think sometimes in the beginning of business or even at any stage in a business, you can spend a lot of time like being busy, but you're actually not doing anything that's like visibility. And so that's a big piece of it too, is like showing up. So I tell people like start before you're ready. And even if it's like, I sort of have like, there's a few people in the community in Renegade Motherhood who don't actually even really have a business yet, but they have this passion for something and they figure it out already. Like, I just need to keep talking about it and consistently surrounding myself with the next piece community. Ideas do not thrive in our brains. If you have a business, but you never let anybody know, do you actually have a business? You know, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, you know? And so we need to put ourselves around people who are going to celebrate our business, who are going to help share our idea, and who are going to also like help us maybe brainstorm, problem solve. And I think you have to be really careful about curating that community. I think very often, sometimes in the beginning, we can have an idea for something. This could be business, this could be anything. This doesn't have to just be, this doesn't have to be entrepreneurial, like focused. You get an idea, I want to cut my hair, you know? And then you go and you tell like your best friend of 40 years who's only ever known you with long hair, who is very change averse. And she's like, oh, but why would you do that? You have such beautiful long hair and it really frames your face and it really suits you. And you're gonna, I just think you're gonna regret it. So immediately that passion, that excitement you have is like extinguished. And this happens so often in the business space. We get an idea, we go tell the wrong people, and then that passion is just like a wet blanket. It's just like thrown on it. And so that's why the community piece is really important, but with the asterisk of it needs to be the right community, a community of people who understand like the energy that you're feeling, you know, not always the idea. Like I don't understand real estate. That's not like my jam, or the mortgage industry, but I can still understand what my networking colleagues who are in those industries are feeling when they're struggling with sales, when they're struggling with follow-up, when they're struggling with showing up on social media, whatever that is. And then the last piece is timing. I highly recommend anybody who has not read the book, Big Magic, to grab it, to listen to it, to read it, however you consume your books. She talks about the idea that there are these, you know, kind of these ideas out there and like they're meant for you. But if we don't seize on it, it's going to go to the next person. So for the woo people listening, and I think a lot of us have experienced that, where we have this idea for an invention or the name of a program or something, and then we like don't ever do anything on it about it. And then a couple months or years later, it pops up on Instagram and we're like, wait a minute, that was my idea, right? So the timing piece again has that asterisk of like, when I say timing, it's actually more about like the timing is never going to be right. The timing is never going to be perfect, especially when you're a mom. And so it's really like accepting that. And when you have that passion, when you have that idea, when you are willing to commit to the consistency and surround yourself with the right people, then the timing is now. Like that's it. That's it. I had so many reasons over the last year to not do things, to hold myself back, to slow myself down. But I knew like what I was doing was like so needed and like it was making me excited and making me happy and filling my cup, that it was like the timing is now 100%. I want to like finish this before I go to bed. I think some would argue, well, like we do too much as moms, and so we don't want to overextend ourselves and burn out. And yeah, there is absolutely truth to that. But I really, for me at least, and again, I can only speak to my own experience. When I'm feeling lit up, and things are in the flow, like it allows me to tap into like energy that I don't always have. And so in those times, I work a little bit more. I maybe stay up a little bit later. Sometimes I push a little bit harder to get some things done, because like those energy reserves may only happen a couple times a year. And if you're feeling that, like, don't ignore that. Don't ignore that.
Yeah, and I agree on like every single thing you said. I have people ask me all the time, like my clients actually, is like, aren't you exhausted by the end of the day, right? Because I do very hands-on work. It's very deep. And I really connect with clients in a deep way, which you've experienced, right? And I always say the same thing. I think when you are doing the thing that you're meant to do, that you love to do, it like lights me up. So I get done with a client and instead of feeling drained, like they might be drained on the table because they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm so relaxed. I let all that out, right? I'm lit up. I just had this amazing journey with this person and I'm excited and it fills me. And so I think when we do the things that we align with and we are passionate about, it doesn't drain you, even though it's a lot of work and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the first question to ask yourself if you're feeling very burnt out. Like, am I still on that path, right? That I want to be on? Is this still my purpose and my cause that I believe in? Am I doing the work I should be doing, right? Because
So
that's when
well
we
said.
get so
Yes.
burnt out, right?
Yes. Because I was working fewer hours a year ago, but felt wiped, exhausted, uninspired, unmotivated.
Mhm.
But I was like, well, I'll just push harder. I'll push harder. But like, and then as soon as I was just like, nope, like, nope, I don't want to, this is not it. And pivoted, it was just like immediate, just a complete, immediate, like energetic shift.
Yeah.
Complete. So loved how you just explained that. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And then just like you said, for those naysayers, like telling people what you're gonna do. First of all, yes, you have to exactly, you have to tell people what you're doing. Like you said, you came on, we have met, right? And you're like, I didn't even
Mhm.
know you had a podcast. And here I
Yeah.
am, right? And it's so funny because yes, for a while I didn't really tell people. I just kind of put it out because it was kind of a passion project. I also wanted to help moms, and it was just something I was doing, right? But like, yeah, nobody's going to find me on the millions and millions and trillions of podcasts out there unless they know that I'm out there. So, right, yeah, don't be afraid to tell people. And once again, when people are saying, like, no, you can't do that, like, I don't even know how to turn on a computer sometimes. Zoom super scares me. People know I am not tech savvy. I'm like, when in doubt, shut it out. That is how I fix everything in my life.
Love it.
Shut it
Love
out, but
it.
reboot,
Yes.
right?
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yes, exactly. Like I do not, this is not my thing. However, like if I would have listened to them, like then I we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
And once again, if the person that you're talking to hasn't done it themselves, they're
Yeah.
probably not the person you should be listening to anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like if it's another person who's done a podcast, then first of all, they're probably not going to tell me not to do it, but they're also going to like lift me up because they've been there, they understand it. So only listen to those people who are also in that circle. It doesn't have to be the
Yeah.
same circle as yours, but they're like creating also, like they know what it takes, not the people
Yeah.
who say no to anything, right? Like those are not your people. So
Yeah.
totally agree.
And I think too, like especially with social media and Facebook groups and everything, I found myself when I first had my first daughter, I definitely went into this kind of like self-doubt spiral because nothing prepares you for parenthood, like full stop, nothing. You can read all the books, you just never know what you're going to get. And we're scrolling, we're exhausted, we're sleep deprived, our brain has changed, like all the stuff, the hormones, like all the things that shift in our bodies that again, not enough people are talking about. But it breeds this like lack of confidence. And so then we go into permission seeking mode where it's like this
Mm-hmm.
idea of like, tell me what to do, or is this okay? And we start doubting our own instincts. And that's definitely what happened to me. And that bled into then like how I was showing up in my business. And I was looking for other people to tell me the shortcuts, to tell me how to make it easier. But the way they were doing it was brilliant, but it was not the way I'm built to do business and to interact with people. And so even though I was doing it, and even though it was like, yeah, making me some money and stuff like that, I wasn't happy. And eventually that's going to catch up with you.
Now
Yeah.
that brings me to my probably my next question here is actually, so all right, you build this community of moms, right? And did you ever think like who is going to come? Like because I think that's what happens, right? Like you build something and you're like, oh my God, I'm building these events, who is
Oh
going to
yeah.
show up, and
Everyone.
are why, right, why would they even listen to me doing this? So I'm seeing from your face that yes, this is hitting home.
Yes.
And so like, okay, so with this doubt, like how did you still move forward? How do you overcome that kind of feeling, because I think that does stop a lot of us in our tracks.
Totally. Like I said, the first time I posted about it, I actually think looking back, I thought that it was going to get more comments than it did that first post, like, hey, I still have it. I screenshotted it because I wanted to like remember what it was like, then and like what's happened since. I think that's really important to like my friend Jess always says, you have to stop and look down the mountain instead of just
Mm-hmm.
always looking up at like where we're trying to get to next. We have to like look and see how far we've come. But even with that, I was like, well, I can't hurt to just put it out there. And I think part of me was like, well, yeah, there's got to be like a lot of moms out there with businesses. And there really was not a lot of conversation, but there was one person, and she is the founder of Family Village, Melanie, which is an amazing organization in Colorado. It's like co-working, and plus they have a couple hours of childcare you can use every day. And so it's a fantastic, I can't say enough nice things about what they're doing. But she was like, let's come see my space because I could give you a space to use, which was amazing because that was the next step of like, okay, now where do we have this if anyone wants to come? And then she put me in touch with someone named Megan, and Melanie and Megan had run like a mom's meetup in Longmont prior to COVID. It had also kind of disbanded like my other one had. And she's like, well, maybe like we could just bring some of our people together. And so we did that, for a while. And so it's like, if we don't put it out there, sometimes it's not about 20 people, it's about like one person. And
Mm-hmm.
like one person can put you in touch with another person, and then they can put you in touch with another person. That's why it's called networking. And that's exactly how social media works and LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
works and everything. And so many people in sales and business talk about the power of one. But when I look back to some of the pivotal moments of my entrepreneurial journey, it really has been about one person that's led to another and another and another. It's not about like, oh, I announced this program and 45 people joined in the first hour. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that happens to some people, but it only happens because they had the first person, however many years ago, that led to another person that builds confidence. So I'm very grateful to Melanie and Megan because they were definitely instrumental in that early phase of this. But then I had to work through other things where at first the group was free. It was very much just like it was free, it was very casual. And then I had a couple of people in the community, a big one, Rosia, who's been part of the group from the beginning. And Rosia and I would have coffee, and she'd be like, "Why aren't you charging for this, Jen? Like, you're working so hard. Like, I just think like, it's okay to charge for it." And I realized like I was sort of, in some ways we'd go to these meetups and I'd be like, you have to be charging what you're worth. And then I was doing the opposite of that,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I was like, all right, I'll charge $5. And this was like a year ago. I think our January 2024 meetup was maybe December. It was like a $5 donation. So it wasn't even like you had to do it. It was like a donation. And then I think January was $5. And then I was like, okay, now we're going to do 15. And I'll tell you what, Lisa, like the energy changed and improved when I actually started charging money. And I think in
Yes.
my mind, I had told myself it'd be the opposite, but people place greater value on things that you value. And so I still wanted to keep it accessible. That's still a core belief of mine. And I'm still, as I'm going to raise prices in 2025, because, the stuff, it's not cheap to find space. And I'm still paying people and paying, vendors and venues and all the stuff to be able to grow. But I also have ways of making things accessible to people. And we're starting like a mutual aid fund and some other great things. But
Mm-hmm.
people value what you value. And
Yeah.
so the energy shifted, and that started to then give me more confidence of like, oh, like more people, we need a bigger space now. And so like I went and sought out like a bigger space. And then we had like 50 people come to that like
Mm-hmm.
first. And I was like, oh my gosh. But you have to bet on yourself. There comes a point where it's like, yes, I still have imposter syndrome. Yes, I still struggle with self-doubt. I have an acting background, so rejection has been part of my entire adult life. And even before that, even high school and stuff, I would
Mm-hmm.
put myself out there and not get the role I wanted. And so in some ways that's become like a superpower of mine, but it
Mm-hmm.
also means like I can still be very triggered when I get rejected. It definitely, my inner child does not like feeling rejected because it goes back to when that cast list was posted and I wasn't on the part that I wanted. But again, going back to like that community, when I looked at the community and I was like, I'm doing what they're wanting, I'm providing what they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
And if a few people don't want it, that's okay. Like, I'm not worried about the few people who don't want it. I'm not worried about the few people who don't come back. I'm focused on the greater
Yeah.
part, the majority. But so one thing that I got very clear on was that I wanted to keep it accessible. And so now it's about having like, okay, so what are some ways that I can create some offerings that are maybe a little more like a higher investment.
Mhm.
And then still have like lots of ways that people can come and experience it for reduced costs or even free for certain community members who may really need that, who might be sitting in the situation of like, I can pay a babysitter for 2 hours or I can buy a ticket and I can't necessarily do both. And so
Yeah.
how do we do that? I've talked a lot recently about this idea of like motherhood and moms in business as an economy. And it's a really cool thing when you can support a mom in business, because it's that idea of like, if you give a mom a cookie, if you give a mouse a cookie, like if you give a mom a client, if you give a mom $1, like the things that happen with that, it can be really awesome. Because I think when you put money in the hands of like the right kinds of moms with these great ideas, moms will show up. We will do so much work for no money. We will do so much unpaid labor, both at home. We are the ones who often serve on the PTAs, serve on the volunteer boards, do all the things. But in order to make that footprint even bigger, we have to also be like supporting the economy of moms and businesses.
Mhm.
And so that's been a big part of like just kind of what I'm marinating on right now of like, how can we, yes, build this community of moms in business, this networking community, but even more so, how can we build this like economy of moms in business? Because not only does it, yes, it puts more money in our pockets and all the things, and we can do more for our kids, but like it's so much more beyond that. It also gives us ability to really go out and enact legitimate positive change, or maybe free us up to run for office or start the nonprofit. And so I think moms are like, we tend to be often mission driven, but we can't always achieve that mission, that greater, higher purpose, if we don't have the financial backing behind us.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it's just, that's very much been on my mind. And how do we continue to grow, and how do we truly help everybody grow together and make things accessible without giving everything away for free. So
Yeah. It's a big mission, and I know that you're going to come out on top of it because you are a doer and you're very passionate about the community. So I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. Now, what do you want moms listening to take action on?
Bet on yourself. If it's that you've had this idea and you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to bring this to the world, like start with just knowing that like you have this idea for a reason. This idea came to you for a reason, and then seek out community. And if Renegade Motherhood can play a role in that, awesome. If it's whatever community that is for you, it could be your neighbor, it could be a mom's group, it could be a Facebook group, it could be, if you're part of like a spiritual organization, it could be that. You could be the person who needs to build the community. So I think that's the other piece too. I sometimes have conversations with people who maybe live in more rural parts of the world or country, or even like really big cities where it's like, it's like there's literally people all over the place, but I still feel lonely. I believe sometimes people are waiting for you to like start the thing, to build the community. And I believe like ideas really come to those people who are like kind of the self-starters, the igniters. And again, let it start with like one person. It doesn't, this idea that success is about like millions of dollars and thousands of people on your email list and thousands of people at sold out events. Like that's not it. I mean, that can be a goal eventually, but like it starts with like impacting one person, right? And then that person tells another person, and that person tells another person. So it's okay to let it start. I don't even like the word small, because I still don't even think that's small. I think helping one person is massive. But like you said, you'll never 100% know what your impact is, but it won't be anything if you don't start with like that one person. So it's okay to let that first step be kind of a baby step.
And most people, actually, even the big people like Tony Robbins, it's, everyone knows, like, here's his name out there, right? Like he shows like clips of his first video trying to sell something. And he talks about how it's like the first event had like, four people. It's like everyone, even the big people out there that we look to being one day, maybe are starting very small too. Not small, but with less people. Right. So
Totally.
yeah, I think it's great.
We're not going to be Oprah tomorrow, but we can be Oprah on like her first day
We're Oprah on her
small.
first day. Yes,
Right.
that's who
Yeah.
we are. I
Yeah.
love
Like
that.
that's just, yeah. I mean, it's like we often put people on pedestals, but we forget that they are people as well and that they had to start someplace too.
Yeah. So, where can the listeners find you and tell us what you offer?
Yeah, so you can go to renegademotherhood.com to find out about all of our events that are happening. Right now, we have a couple locations in Colorado and Phoenix, and we're looking to open up more locations for live events throughout the country in the coming year, in 2025. And then we also have an online community, both a free Facebook group, which we can put in show notes, and then also a paid digital community. And that is, we do lots of like smaller group connections. I call it mother minding, like mastermind, but for moms, bring in guest experts and coaching calls and things like that. And then if you want to hang out with me on Instagram, I'm at It's Jen Morris and also renegade.motherhood. So lots of different places to kind of get a taste of things and hang out with us both online or live at an event.
Awesome and totally worth checking out. I learned so much from just one event, and I'm going to go do a few more events. I'm looking forward to
Yay.
the new
Awesome.
year and one in December. I'm going to try to get to too.
Great.
So,
Well,
yes, we'll have that
yeah.
all in the show notes for anyone that needs to just click on those resources and then they can just see what Jen has to offer. But thank you, Jen, for coming on the show. This has been really fun and educational and just inspiring all around. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Jen is always so inspiring in all that she does. And if you're looking to join one of her amazing communities, just click on the link in the show notes and check out all that she is offering. And we are officially into the holiday season and gift giving. It is so fun to think out of the box and think creative, thoughtful gifts. So check out what the Real Life Moms is offering. We have so many books that are written by our guests that have made incredible gifts. We have a Mastering Belly Time video for new moms. You can download it and just send it to those new moms with kids from 0 to 6 months that they are learning this incredible milestone that really will set them up for success. We also have a printable workbook, Regain Your Inner Calm, that makes an amazing stocking stuffer that's filled with easy exercises that you can do anytime and anywhere. And for those moms who are looking to podcast, we have a printable ebook, Podcasting on a Budget, that also makes an incredible stocking stuffer. Just check out our store on thereallifemoms.com. Links are in the show notes. And until next week, keep carving out time for yourself. And we'll have another incredible guest next Tuesday with another incredible conversation.